Yoshi, who's next?
Next up, we've got the Blitmap derivative with Sayangel and crew. I forget exactly. I know you mentioned a couple other people. I forget who.
I'm on
Hey,
the
everyone.
crew.
Yes, Ticklish.
Yeah, it's got a name now as well. It's called Blitkin.
That's right.
Love it.
And we also have OXS. Are they on Zoom? Maybe.
I believe OXS.
Hey folks, I'm here.
Hey, cool. All right, the crew's all here. Let's dive into it.
We'll vamp for time if you.
I will BRB.
It's been yeah.
I can vamp for time.
Yeah, okay. Sure.
Well, imagine if somewhere out there in the kind of infinite angles and possibilities of chain space, there exists an alternate version of the Blitmaps that we're familiar with, those kind of mimetic constructed souls that exist somewhere and somehow. Imagine there's this alternate version of them, and imagine that in exploring chain space, they happen across a portal that maybe isn't quite configured right, maybe is configured deliberately strangely. And in crossing over from the ordinal space over to F space, they are changed somehow. Over to you, Sayangel.
That's right. I think you all got a primer on what Blitkin are. Here's a little teaser of some of the very cool artwork that has gone into it. If any of you are all Blitmap fans, then you will recognize some of the palettes and also some fun play on words into the original Blitmap pieces. So I think Ticklish gave you a little overview on what Blitkin are and how we're thinking about their place in the Blitverse. But essentially, they are 100 alternate Blitmaps from another universe, another chainverse, another chain space, whatever favorite, whatever your favorite verse is. And they will all have the same palettes as the originals. So those 4 colors that we all know and love, but new compositions, new artists, and new blockchains, which is one of my favorite parts. So you saw a teaser of some of the art, and Ticklish, is there anything else you want to add about some of the art and why we've been doing this before we dive into some of the nerdy stuff?
Well, the ethos and the niche that Blitmap occupies in the wider space is one that's often imitated, hard to completely match. I think a big part of it is that it was 17 very diverse people from all over the world. No style guide in particular. It was an open brief. It's the kind of thing that's sort of, a bit frowned upon in the kind of intersection between tech and marketing from which most people draw from. But it certainly showed that, you can, if you put that up as a beacon, and then interesting and creative people come to you. And the spin-offs and the children of Blitmap are now all around us. So we want to take that philosophy of being CCO, that philosophy that artists bring something indefinable and extra to the table. And we have a stunning variety of established and upcoming artists who are 17. In fact, we just did a count today. We have that exact symmetry, which is very pleasing to us all. We have 17 artists who are pushing the boat out to establish something just how Blitmaps showed us the way with being on chain, with being CCO. Thanks to Sayangel and the artists we have, we're going to show you one step after that. What is cross-chain, and what more imagination can we unleash upon the world? Back to you.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So here's a preview of how we've been thinking about the some of the art. Not all of it is a play on words like this, but this is one of my favorites. So Blitmap, there's a typo in there, bitmap, but Blitmap number 62, Lay Off Me, reinterpreted in the Blitkin universe as Pay Me Off. Same exact palette, but a new concept, and kind of adapting to some of the meta and some of the culture in the space these days. And so I wanted to show a couple of screenshots here of how this all started, February 8th. So not even, or just exactly 2 weeks ago. You all know there was a rush to do ordinals, and a lot of people were experimenting. And to Ticklish's point, the Blitmap server is this beacon for a lot of fun experimenting and creative folks. And some people were talking about making new blitz in the ordinal world. And we got to chatting. And then one of the things that came up was, well, what if we had blitz inscribed into Bitcoin with ordinals, but then talking to ETH counterparts and sort of taking the original Blitmap concept of siblings to a new level, hence the kin part of the name. These are the long lost relatives that are traveling across ETH into the Bitcoin blockchain and back. So let's dive into how that's done. I think the last Def demos, Tim Shell was showing his insanely cool chain space project where him and Ian were inscribing these webcam filters into ordinals and then minting ETH tokens that were linked to that. And that was really intriguing to me, especially thinking about a lot of the discourse around royalties today and how you can mint out an ETH project but then get 0 royalties after that. To me, there's something really interesting about exploring Bitcoin and ordinals as an on-chain alternative to IPFS, but then also empowering the artist or whoever it might be who keeps that original piece on Bitcoin and can then trade it later or have some sort of parallel relationship with the ETH token holders. So I thought that was super cool, really interesting, and thought, okay, let's explore with this Blitmap Bitcoin derivative that we're all talking about. And so the way it works, and I'll show you some code for sure in a bit. The initial concept was very similar to what Tim Shell and Ian did. You've got a Zora contract and then a metadata contract that is actually just pointing to this ordinals link, which in our case was just an SVG. So here's our Genesis equivalent SVG, and it returns that in the metadata. So then your Ethereum marketplaces will show you something, and they don't really care that it lives on ordinals. It's just SVG. So that's what this is. And we want to take it to the next level. We wanted to see, can we make siblings the way Blitmap did, but using on-chain data from Bitcoin? And if you're not familiar with the concept of siblings, in Blitmap, there was an original, in this case, Pizza Time, and then another original, there were 100 of them, City, and minters could mash them up to create these really cool, unique new pieces with an original composition and another original palette to get Pizza Time City. And so we started exploring this concept across chains. And so step one was, okay, can we make ordinals dynamic? Spoiler alert, yes, we can. So I'm going to click on this link. So this is an SVG. If I open up the source code here, a very nicely optimized SVG using a pipeline that Ticklish and a couple of the other artists developed. This one I think is 4 kilobytes to keep inscription costs low, but it's an SVG, so it's also infinitely scalable, even though it's technically only 32 pixels by 32 pixels. And in order to make siblings, which in the Blitkin universe are called scrambles, we needed a way to change the colors. If you're familiar with the Blitmap contract, the way it does it, it inscribes, I think, 268 bytes, and there's palette data in there as well as the bitmap data. And we didn't have access to that because we were inscribing SVGs, not writing just raw bytes into an Ethereum smart contract. And so we came up with a fun way to put JavaScript in SVGs, which you can, and then accept URL parameters to change their color. So if you look at the URL at the top, this is the exact same ordinal, but it's changing color based on the parameters because all the ordinals link is just a way to fetch this, and it passes along all the parameters to the SVG. So we had dynamic ordinals working. Great. Now we could put them into our smart contract. This is what it looks like. I gave you a brief glimpse of the source code, but there's just some variables at the top, and then the JavaScript at the bottom updates this based on what you're passing. And so hopefully you can see where this is going, where the smart contract just appends the values to change the color. And I got really excited when we had the dynamic ordinals working, but then got really sad after remembering that OpenSea and these other marketplaces load the SVGs with the image tag, which completely kill any code that is running within it. So the dynamic concept wasn't quite working. So our solution was to wrap the SVG in HTML and then pass it back to metadata via the animation URI. And so here's a snippet from the contract where just doing a bunch of string concatenation, as is common with these SVG on-chain projects, but now we're doing HTML. And what this gives us is, I think I have an example over here. Yeah, so here's the HTML that we end up getting from the contract. It's just a little bit of styling to make sure the SVG shows up full screen, and then embedding the SVG in there as an object. And the object is coming from the ordinals link, of course. Okay. And now is where the fun begins. Now that we had it working on chain, now we apply Blitmap palette. So here is just a quick screenshot, but I can show you the listing on OpenSea as well, on testnet, where these are all, this is just 3 ordinals, but all being recolored on the fly with the contract by just passing in the palettes from the original Blitmap contract. And if we go to the contract, it's pretty straightforward. There's a Blitmap interface to the contract, and there's a step where we load up all the inscriptions. So we do have to inscribe all of our original pieces. And then when token URI is fetched, there's a random seed associated with every inscription, but there's definitely a lot of room for improvement there. We take the Blitmap, I think it's 268 bytes. We take that so that we can parse out the hex values, and then also take the palette name of the original one, and then pass it to the SVG, which then also gets wrapped in HTML. And that's what you are seeing here. So yeah, we got it onto the marketplace. They're being colored. We're super excited. And so if we revisit the contract breakdown, here's what it ends up looking like. You've got a call to token URI to the ERC 721 contract, which then just fetches the metadata contract token URI, checks against the Blitmap contract, applies the palette to an inscription SVG, and then returns a beautiful new scramble, as we're calling it. And so to clarify what a scramble is, because there's definitely a lot of moving parts here, we've got original Blitkin, which are being inscribed as SVGs onto a Bitcoin Satoshi. There's 100 of them. And then you've got original Blitmaps, which already live on chain. And we're taking those 100 palettes, and then we're combining them on the fly to create this new hybrid, as Tim Shell put it, 200% on-chain project and artwork here, building on top of the artwork that we all know and love in the Blitmap community. There's still a lot up in the air. We don't know how many scrambles there will be, but we know that the originals will live on ordinals, and then the scrambled versions will live on Ethereum, all entirely on chain. So what's next for us? We're almost done with all 100 originals, I think. Yep, sounds like it. We've got 17 artists, which is super exciting. We have to inscribe them all onto Bitcoin and then figure out our mint details, invite friends like all of you to the Discord, and then mint. So that is Blitkin. OXS or Ticklish, did I forget anything?
No, you hit all of the marks, and it's, you know, I've been living this alongside you for the past 2 weeks, but I was getting very excited by what you had to say. Yes, it's take a step back and see it all happen. Ooh, makes me feel quite tingly inside. Thank you so much.
I'll go back to the preview because there's some great images in here, and I resisted in sharing some of my favorites because I do want to wait for a review.
The suspense, the reveal. Well, the chat is going crazy. Everyone is sharing that meme of "shut up and take my money." So you're gonna have a lot of Def interest in this. Does anybody have any questions that they want to
That's
jump
kind
with?
of interest, I'd say.
No questions, but just want to say that I absolutely love this. Yeah, Blitmap has always had a special place in my heart, and just love how you're working with ordinals, and the new art looks fantastic. So yeah, huge props.
Oh, thank you very much. Very touching to hear.
I like that it's very much like a riff that, you know, that keeps certain parts of the tradition in mind, but is like actually like adding new pictures and things to it.
Yeah, because I've been living this sort of thing for the past year and a half, really. I've been making paintings of Blitmaps, so I've spent a lot of time staring at these 1024 pixels, like trying to like coax the meaning and the story behind each one. And so it feels like a real dam has been released to like, yeah, I've had a lot of thoughts about these things. So yeah, I'm glad from what you're saying that we don't want to like just put glasses on everything, right? Like that's not you know, it's like funny for a second.
Yes.
The thing which has been really gratifying to see is how artists, even artists who aren't that familiar with Blitmap, they can see what's behind there, and they can see what's going on, and they can improvise with it in a way that we feel the sort of aim is that, you know, the jokey spins on each one, but also I feel as 100 images, we've worked hard to make something that stands alone. And that's been very important value for us.
Yes. So how are you guys thinking about strategies for the mint here, aside from getting all of Def on the allow list?
It's a hot topic.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah, we're still trying to debate that amongst ourselves. We're doing we're going the Blitmap route, where all the artists are a voice within it, but then that makes it actually quite difficult for all voices to harmonize. So we're pushing on that.
It doesn't, I don't think it helps that we have 2 blockchains as well, right? So you've got like, well, what do we do with the ordinals? What do we do with the scrambles? Yeah.
And everything's moving around us. I just learned just before I sat down here, you can get ordinals in a MetaMask wallet now, apparently. So that may change things considerably. Yes, in flux. We're hoping to hammer that down as soon as possible.
So Ticklish, I got a follow-up question for you. Is all the art like collabs between all 17, or do somebody take the lead on one? Like, how do you sort of divide it up?
Oh, I mean, yeah, there's not enough space there on the 32 by 32 to have other too many paintbrushes in. Though some of them have, there's been back and forth and feedback between the artists. No, it's been very much a spreadsheet. Here are the 100 Blitmaps. Who wants this one? And we've been very polite and genial in not stepping on each other's toes. Like, oh, I've got an idea for this. I've got an idea for this. I think this one would do well for your style because you like drawing these. We've been doing a lot of that, and I mean, yeah, we've it's all gelled together very quickly. We're on the cusp of getting all 100. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, totally. Thanks.
Try to stay faithful to the Google Sheets ordinal roots here.
I have a question. I believe you were like pretty involved, or at least a big fan of like polys.art, which was kind of a recent project that also felt like a thoughtful like derivative of Blitmaps. Are there any appearances from art from polys.art that will be riffed on or incorporated into this?
You know what? There were some. I mean, I still have a great place in my heart for Polly's art, and you know, I every day I sort of check to see if it hasn't, you know, kind of risen again. I think it's time. I think these things will cycle around. So yes, there were some draft ones of Polly's art direct homages, but they kind of ended up on the cutting room floor. So it's been there in our hearts. And certainly the way we're conducting ourselves is very much in the Polly's art style, kind of internally. So no direct riffs, I'm afraid, but it's there in spirit.
All good. Good to know it's at least there in spirit.